than a normal civilian. I'm talking to you as a guy that's eaten a whole lot of explosions. I have TBIs. I have a good amount of traumas that I have to seek active help for, and I have to, do better.
I would say probably my most ferocious warriors of all time. I mean, just straight up gunfighter, badass. Recently tried to commit suicide. His son found him. Not to go into too many details, but that's all bad. Wearing masks is bad. Young people talking to people with masks on is all bad and scary, but World War II was pretty bad, pretty scary. And yet, we produced the greatest generation. One of my best snipers, as soon as we got done with the deployment, lays his bike down because he just wasn't in his body anymore.
So, Aaron, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna shit all over your trust, bro. It took me a solid, no lie, 10 years to transition. So, Ben, you said 3 years. It took me 10, okay? Because then I went from corporate America to college football. Well, college football is a lot like the military. Hey, man, go fuck yourself. Hey, motherfucker, let's go. Years on this whole Nebraska thing a little bit. Our country is made on incarceration. All right, it goes back to the 80s when the prisons sponsored all of the underground rap because they were like, yo, we can fill up the prisons. All right. 1932, the National Health Organization, NIH, started a study in Tuskegee where they allowed 400 African-American males to live with syphilis that they could treat until 1972. But I'm going to flip that around and say all them cats lie for a living. Okay? They take classes on lying and manipulation and
But all right, folks, we'll transition into the next topic. Before we do that, I got a question for Jake here. Jake, and I like to ask people this question just because it shows me where their mind is, right? And the answer is always interesting. So if you had a time machine and you can travel to anywhere in history and change one major event, what would that be and why?
Ooh, change one major event.
Let's go.
So I'm gonna give you two answers because changing a major event and being part of a major event are two different things. So I want to be a part of the Attila the Hun's army because they were conquering and killing, but they had a concubine set of like 30,000. All right, like my dude has fathered 36 billion direct descendants. Like that dude was getting after. So I want to be a part of that crew and just terrorize the whole world. You know what I'm saying? Like that sounds like the best party in the world to me. Okay, so that's the time machine. Going to be in Attila Hun's army with one of his generals, okay? But if I could go back in time and change one thing, okay, I would go back to like 1933, and I would tell all the Jews to start getting out of Europe and Germany, and like I would tell all my kinfolk, because I'm from over there in Poland, right on the border, I would just raise the red flag so everybody could have got out so that they didn't have 7 million Jews killed in concentration camps and that crazy shit. So if I could change one thing, it would be go back and to tell all the Jews to get out of town, kind of forecast what's coming. I know a lot of them did leave and they felt it coming, but, and that maybe I'm being a little bit selfish in that one, Jay, with that answer. But, I got a great aunt, my grandfather's sister. My grandfather's sister that had the brand or the tattoo still on her arm. She refused to remove it, even, as she was 90 years old. She's like, no, I don't want anybody to ever forget what happened. So, and I know bad things happen in history, and I just talked about being a part of the Attila the Hun, and they did a lot of bad shit, but
it's called balance.
Being a little bit selfish, I wish I could have kind of warned the Jewish people in Germany and in Eastern Europe so that they could have got out.
Gotcha. Aaron, you want to take a stab at that one or no?
Oh, hell yeah. I'm going directly into the Black Hawk Down scenario. I'm bringing fucking Randy Sugar. I'm bringing some fucking, I'm bringing an extra platoon of people, and those guys aren't dying outside that helicopter. That's it. That's easy. No, I don't know. The time machine thing is always wacky to me. I guess if I was going back in time and I could stop, one thing from happening. I don't know. Everybody goes to baby Hitler, of course. Like I'd like to go schwack baby Hitler, and maybe that would help out. But I don't know. Who knows what the butterfly effect would be? So I don't know if I have a serious answer for that one. I think if I could be anywhere to experience a time, like if I was going to just roll my dice, we had this conversation the other day in a group chat. Somebody asked, would you rather be in trench warfare in World War I, or would you rather go to Utah Beach and have to climb the cliffs at Point du Hoc in World War II? I don't know, man. That World War II sounds like a good job. And it's partially for the same reason that Jake did. I've been to Normandy during the D-Day celebrations. I couldn't buy myself a beer in that town for 3 straight weeks. They found out that I was a paratrooper. I jumped into Iron Mike DZ. They found out that, we were over there. I couldn't buy myself a beer. Can you imagine the amount of just absolute females just throwing themselves at you across all of Europe as somebody that just liberated all of Normandy, France? I got to be honest. If you make it through, if you make it to St. Mary Glee and you get the word that Operation Overlord was a success and you've beaten the axis of evil, I'm trying to hang out for that next 6 months in Europe. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to chill.
Yeah, I think if we had went back in time and killed baby Hitler, we wouldn't have the greatest generation of all time, and those that NSW flag and those Air Force patches would have reared its head a lot sooner. So there we go. Right?
Stop it.
Effects, the butterfly effect.
It's just like Weimar Germany. That's what I'm going to say about today. It's just like Weimar Germany, and people are going to have to do their research and be like, wait a second, it is just like Weimar Germany.
Yeah. All right, guys. Let's transition into this next topic, right? This one's interesting because it supports veterans. All right. So Nebraska's new law, modeled by Veterans Justice Commission and signed by Governor Jim Palin, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, expand judicial division statewide, allowing all district judges to offer treatment instead of prosecution for veterans that are legible facing nonviolent felonies. All right. This initiative is being chaired by Chuck Hagel. He is the former Secretary of Defense, and he's also a Vietnam vet, right? So he has some skin in the game. This basically allows judges, instead of throwing veterans in jail for committing, non-felony crimes, it allows them to get them into a program to help them rehab. All right. The program was signed into effect in April. And based on the feedback that they're getting, this has been pretty beneficial, right? So is this needed? Well, according to this study, it is, right? Because according to these numbers, guys, approximately 200,000 veterans are currently in jail, right? And it's a direct result from many are facing PTSD, alcoholism, and then abuse due to their time spent in combat, right? Ben said something earlier about us fighting the long war. Well, this is a result of that, right? So Nebraska's taking the lead on this, and they're hoping that the rest of the country will follow suit. All right, so we'll go to Aaron first. What are your thoughts as far as what Nebraska's trying to do?
So overall, I think it's great. There is a problem, 200,000 veterans incarcerated nationwide. That's absolutely ridiculous, right? A lot of them for nonviolent crimes, which is where this comes from. There are specific problems that you're going to run into when you're dealing with the veteran community, right? That are, distinct and also a lot more complex than a normal civilian. I'm talking to you as a guy that's eaten a whole lot of explosions. I have TBIs. I have a good amount of traumas that I have to seek active help for, and I have to, do better. Man, being completely vulnerable and transparent, I'm still finding myself getting like murderously, I want to punch something and physically act out angry over really stupid things. Like I don't road rage anymore, but sometimes I can't put this shelf up directly and it's not exactly level. And I literally have to walk out of my house and I have to find a way to deal with that. The VA isn't great at getting veterans the mental health care that they need. And in the military, it's a cool thing. We kind of joke about it. It's a cool thing in the military. Every day at 3:00 to shut down the op section, have some whiskey with your bros. And, you go out and you drink pretty hard on the weekend, and the work hard, play hard kind of underbelly of our culture is always there. when veterans get out, they use that alcohol as a coping mechanism. They use those illicit substances as coping mechanisms. They have all of these other issues that really the rank and file members don't understand. When you have a veteran that really just has a mental break, they've lost everything, right? They've lost these friends that they made that they thought were going to have for the rest of their lives, either to combat or just they've drifted apart after their time in the military. And they start to become frequent flyers in the law enforcement system. And the up until now, up until this Nebraska legislation, the answer has just been, well, you're an American citizen, you should know better, so we're just going to punish you. And so for this third or this fourth DUI, we're not going to look at why it is you can't manage your alcohol problem that you develop while you're in the military. We don't know why you acted out in such a way. And I'm talking nonviolent felonies, right? But you start doing all these other things that are acting out. They're indicative of a larger problem, and that larger problem is veterans' mental health. The GWAT generation, we're just starting to scratch the surface of how bad it was for the dudes that lived their entire life going to Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, Africa, Yemen, all these other places where we maintain a presence. We're just starting to see the after effects and the cracks in those things happening. So the fact that we're, number one, acknowledging that specific population, that's the biggest benefit for this, for me, is that finally Nebraska is standing up and going, these aren't just normal people that are experiencing mental health issues. These aren't just people that are experiencing issues with the law. This is an entire population of people that we need to start putting resources towards. Some of those resources are going to be the way that we treat them when they run afoul of the law. Now, I don't think people should get a pass. Again, this is for nonviolent felonies, and you have to be eligible for the program. You can't be a frequent flyer. You can't be somebody that typically, enacts violence on their fellow citizens. However, giving the judges the ability to do diversion, to do maybe an anger management class, maybe it is an Alcoholics Anonymous program or a substance abuse program that you need to get in. I'm glad that we have the wiggle room to have the judge go, listen, I could put you in jail. That's probably not going to be the best place for you. I think we're going to look at another thing. We're going to do some probation, and we're going to find you a way to get back to right. I think that's the most heartening thing, as opposed to disheartening thing about this story, that as I was reading through it, is that it gives the option to actually help people and let them be better. It's not just that they're going to keep them out of jail. Okay, tight. That's great. But the point is that keeping them out of jail is part of a bigger project that's meant to actually help them get better.
Yeah, well, I think it's everything Aaron just said, spot on. I mean, this touches so deeply on me personally, and just on how many people I know, how many people I've lost in service, past service, after getting out, realizing one of your stellar operators commits suicide. And, I just had probably I would say probably my most ferocious warriors of all time. I mean, just straight up gunfighter, badass. Recently tried to commit suicide. His son found him. Not to go into too many details, but run-ins with the law. Lots of guys. Like one of my best snipers. As soon as we got done with the deployment, lays his bike down because he just wasn't in his body anymore. He was somewhere else. We just came back from deployment, and gets in trouble, and so on and so forth. So many stories that we all have. I know, and I think it's a great thing that Secretary Hagel, right, is taking the charge on this, right, and the governor from Nebraska. I think it's a great thing they're doing this, and again, the any violent crimes, it's terrible, because we got to get before bang, because that's going to happen. Somehow we've got to treat people better. I mean, I know the startup of the NICO program was very important for a lot of the frontline communities, soft community especially, but really getting in, doing the deep work. And one of the first things I'll say to all our brothers and sisters out there too, the number one thing is you got to cut out the self-poisoning. You got to cut out the alcohol. You got to cut out the opiates. You got to cut out the drugs. It's hard. It's not easy. We can all talk about stories of finding ourselves down rabbit holes with all these things. And when you're dealing with chronic pain and loss of identity, you get your nerve structure stretched out, right? So things that aren't normal to many people are normal to you. Modes of behavior of going from 0 to 100 in a heartbeat is not normal to many people, where you can be smiling and the next minute it's go time. It destroys relationships. Veterans find themselves isolated, and again, with that chronic pain and all these things, next thing you know, if you lose, like, let's say you lose your security clearance, now you're out of work. Now what? Rambo is real. Like that movie, I hate to say it. Maybe not some of the other stuff he's doing in there, but right. I mean, that whole thing of the drifter, I've talked to so many guys about that. And like, you don't really get that movie till you get out. And you're like, later on, you're like, oh, damn, okay. That's a deep movie. That was a deep movie on a number of levels. But I think it's a great thing they're doing. And I think more has to be done. Obviously, again, imploring to all brothers and sisters out there too, you have got to, though, uphold the standard. Get with the community. Don't isolate. A big thing with PTSD is that you isolate. You go by yourself. You want to be alone. I'm guilty of it, right? I mean, this is fantastic to be with all you guys and talking about all the things we talk about, but it's easy to go out there and be the lone operator and just off on your own thinking you can do it all alone, but you can't. You get skewed. Your thinking gets skewed and all that. So again, as much as you can, get help, get off the opiates, get off the alcohol, get help, get counseling, get a friend group, hold yourself to that same higher standard again. And maybe someone that's going to hold you accountable so you start doing the basic things well again, But last thing I'll say is I think it's a great program, and I think it's got to spread. We have to make some accommodations for these people that gave up their youth. They gave up, in a lot of cases, their mental and emotional health. They've been separated from family and friends. They don't have that normal stability where, just like in a country, right? When we have a stable country, many things can prosper and grow. And that goes to an individual. If you don't have a stable individual, they're not stable in one place, in one job, in one identity, all these things like that. You can't really accumulate skills and the executive functions in life in order to prosper and thrive and survive. A lot of people are still, a lot of veterans are still figuring it out a couple of years later. They say it takes a minimum 3 years to transition, getting out of the military, especially the combat military, right? So that's all I got.
So it's interesting, Ben, taking off on you and Aaron. Like, I have that quintessential, got out of the military, went to business school, got in trouble, okay, was operating around like, hey man, go fuck yourself. In a number 5 business school, I'm telling people to go fuck themselves, right? Like, normal response in the SEAL teams, you don't like something, hey, go fuck yourself.
That was
right?
Awesome. Tell me you're just doing that like in class, like a bunch of nerd, like 19-year-olds are just there with you, and you're just like, hey, do me a favor, eat a whole bag of dicks.
All right, so I'll tell you one. Here's one for you, okay? So 9/11's happening. We watching 9/11. So I'm in the class. Everybody's pontificating about how this happened. How did it happen? How did it happen? Okay? So they're like, hey, Jake, why don't you tell us how it happened? So I go up to the front of class. I'm like, look, this is simple, man. 5 to 10 guys on a plane. One dude had a box cutter. They went up to first class. They cut somebody's head off, and they took over the plane. Immediately, everybody started yelling at me, no way, no way. And I was like, hey, man, what the fuck y'all do? Like, this is what I fucking do. This is special operations. Shut the fuck up. And my professor was like, oh, God, Jake, can you go sit down? I was like, yes. So I went and sat down. But then we found out later. But my point is, it took me a solid, no lie, 10 years to transition. So, Ben, you said 3 years. It took me 10, okay? Because then I went from corporate America to college football. Well, college football is a lot like the military. Hey, man, go fuck yourself. Hey, motherfucker, let's go, okay? But I got to a job where I had a boss that was like, look, you're a dry drunk, okay? You got raised by an alcoholic. You are a violent, angry person. You're going to go to this program. And so you mentioned it, Aaron, the 12-step programs. I'm in AA. I'm in Al-Anon's, like the family group. That's what I go to. And it was amazing over the course of a year how all of a sudden everything that triggered me didn't trigger me anymore. How my responses became more politically correct. My first inclination to violence and conflict was not run in there and get bloody. It was to walk away. So a lot of those things, but I'm gonna flip the gears on this whole Nebraska thing a little bit. Our country is made on incarceration. All right. It goes back to the 80s when the prisons sponsored all of the underground rap because they were like, yo, we can fill up the prisons. All right. It's one of the downfalls of our capitalism society. The prison people that build prisons figured out how to get more prisoners. Okay. So I would say, as an anti-DEI guy, that this is good for the country, not just veterans. Right. Like, there's not a lot of difference between a gangbanger who's an alcoholic or a drug addict and a guy that comes back from war. They see the same shit, right? They do the same bad things. So I kind of opened up the aperture and said, man, this is probably good for America that we're looking at treatment programs. And maybe some of the benefit of this Nebraska deal is it'll affect and bleed over into other parts of the prison system and get some real programs going. The other thing I wanted to talk about for veterans so that they understand what's really going on. So at 42, I went to the Cleveland Clinic. One of my former guys was in my class, ended up going to be a Green Beret. He's in charge of the liaison between the Green Beret Foundation and the Cleveland Clinic. They got a functional medicine department up there that's phenomenal, kind of like NICO, and it's just incredible. But I went in there, and one of the things I learned, at 42 years old, your ability for your brain to repair itself goes into the negative deficit. And so before 42, you can repair your brain every day. You got enough oxygen in your brain, but after 42, your lungs' ability to produce oxygen in your blood supply goes and it crosses over. So it takes normally about 5 years is what they said. And then, so like you're talking about 47, pretty soon the repair issues aren't able to keep up and you start having problems like we're talking about, Ben, right? Like impulse control. You're drinking, you're doing all this dumb stuff, and you're starting to get more agitated and you start rolling down this bad hill. And we've had a couple kids from the Naval Academy and Marine officers that, I mean, we had a guy living in a Rubbermaid shed in Virginia for 4 years. We had to do 3 interventions on him. He was in a really bad place. And I was like, I finally got him on the brain repair protocol that I have, that I built through a whole bunch of other factors. When we were in Illinois, we had 5, me and a couple, I'm not going to say their names, me and some guys on the staff were having some serious cognitive problems with our brain. And for 2 years, we dug into this shit like savages, the brain repair manual, Live O2, everything we could do. And we did it. And then all of a sudden we started to see a change. So one of the things that I'm going to tell the veterans on this is you got some physical shit going on in your brain. It's all not related to PTSD. The PTSD is a trigger, but you got some physical stuff happening after 42 that you've got to correct physically, the hormones, all the other stuff that we've talked about. So just be aware of that. And then understand that the suicide is a result of the deterioration. Like Mike Day just committed suicide. Okay. If you ask me, Mike Day may not have been suicidal, but he had some severe brain problems that were going on physical and he wasn't able to get them corrected. And then suicide became the only option for him, and we all see it. And the alcohol doesn't help, but you got to have a program like you were saying, Ben, like I'm in Al-Anon. I know Alcoholics Anonymous works. Like you got to go seek out some shit. And I'm going to tell you from a special operations world, it's all touchy fucking feely shit in your feelings. And it's hard to do, right? It's hard to sit in a room with a bunch of fucking 60-year-old white ladies and talk about your problems until 3 months later and you're handling shit completely different. And you're like, oh man, there's some magic in that room, right? There's some magic happening that's allowing me to address problems that I have internally. And it's like, fuck, like, okay, I keep going back. I've been going since 2011. I go twice a week. I go sit in there with all the ladies, and every now and then on Saturdays, we got some men in there, but it is what it is. I got to do what I got to do to be healthy. And more importantly for me, it's allowing me to raise my kids unlike I was raised with a drunk maniac in the house. And I'm making better individuals, right? Like we talk about that purpose and task, and all I could think about was in my house, we raising Zwigs, right? Like we are raising top tier savages, but they got to be raised differently than I was because shit, I'm burning shit up and crushing people's skulls, and that makes a lot of enemies. You don't want to make a lot of enemies if you're going to be really, really successful. You got a few, but you can't live life like me, 50-50. I got 50%. people trying to come from my head, and I got 50% of people love me. And
you're adorable.
in the middle,
you
y'all
think
is getting
you think it's
fucking
50-50? You think it's 50-50?
I
Wow,
more
you gave
80.
yourself credit.
You're right. You're right. It might be 70-30.
You adorable,
yeah,
baby.
I'm not gonna lie to you. Yeah. So I just wanted to put it out there for the veterans, though. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on. We got a lot of programs out there that you guys can reach out to get some help.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I'm gonna say, like Ben said, man, if you're in a bad place and you're not having good thoughts, fucking tell somebody, man. Don't go in a hole by yourself. Don't fucking self-medicate. Go get some help, man, because you can't do it by yourself. You'll end up fucking dead, and that ain't a good place to be.
Yep, that is so true. You know, and just dovetailing off of that too. So, like, one of the things I was told by a psychiatrist I was working with, okay, and I'd gone through the NICO program and some other things like that, just like, trying to get back to my best self. And I've got the same thing, TBIs, all that stuff. And but there's some things that, like Jake is saying, that are harder to repair. And one of the things I was told by the psychiatrist was that this is a surprising thing I never realized, and it kind of got me into the line of work that I got into, was that acts of kindness and acts of service, helping other people, releases oxytocin, which is one of the things that corrects the neural network and fixes your brain. It's that chemical that we release inside. So that's one thing. So again, like they always say, if you're having a problem, help someone with a greater problem. That's you start having more meaning in your life, and then the hardship you've been through and the lessons you've learned can serve. Okay, because all of you out there, and you don't have to be a veteran either. You can be just anybody who's been through some stuff, but find someone in need and help them. And the miracles occur within your own body, as I've been told, right? I'm not a medical expert, but this is what was told to me by a few doctors now at this point. And, so the acts of service, acts of kindness. The next thing is the alcohol. The alcohol eats away at your brain. You got to get away from it. It's a depressant. Okay, once in a while, sure. Okay, whatever. But I'm talking consistent medication, day on, stay on. It exacerbates the brain trauma. It makes you live in that darkness. And anybody out there who's experienced it, you know what I'm talking about. You're going to live in that darkness, live in the low energy. Every problem seems worse than it is. So you've got to free yourself from that as well too. Deep breathing, it turns out, that's a way to mitigate the oxygenation in the brain. Okay, go look at Wim Hof. Take one of his little mini classes, do that. But I do a lot of deep breathing. I do it with clients as well too, and people that are under a tremendous amount of pressure. But it makes a big difference. And you'll feel the effects of it if you really get into it too. But a way to oxygenate, heal your brain. Again, there are things you can do that can help you. And the last thing is cardio, man. You got to get off your ass. Do that 30 minutes of cardio. Again, now a lot of leading doctors will say, okay, that doing cardio helps you to repair and rebuild the neural network, okay, and to rebuild brain networks, all of these things, okay, the neural net. And so you're filling your brain with oxygen and blood, and it serves as a healing function, and actually can create more in the neural network. And so what that gives you is actually more brain power, more cognitive function. So you don't have to be resigned to decline. Don't be saying like, well, I'm over 50 now, I'm screwed. I'm over 40 now, I'm screwed. Or I've got too many TBIs, I'm screwed. You can rebuild. There is hope. You can do it. Okay. There are a lot of things that you can do with self-help, help with others, but it's these simple daily disciplines, okay, that will make a difference. And that oxytocin thing, the acts of service, acts of kindness, that's real. That is real. It's a game changer. So that's all I got.
And I agree with everybody's perspective. A friend of mine said the Army's really, or the military as a whole, whether it be Marine, Navy, Air Force, we're really good at building warfighters, but we're really crappy at the transition process, right? Where we use a guy for 20 years and then spits him out in about 2 weeks, right? Hey, go to this program and you're good to go. Hey, it took me 20 years to become this, and now you're telling me I can fix myself in just 2 weeks. That's not the case at all. I've been out for about a year and I'm still figuring it out, right? And I think that from my perspective, leaders need to be, especially the ones that are currently in the military, they need to take a more active stance in the soldiers transitioning, right? I understand they still have, day-to-day job, but because I know when I was in, like, hey, Sergeant Major, I'm retiring. All right, cool, man. Best of luck to you. I got a battalion to run. And I'm like, all right, cool. Now I figured it out, but not everybody is me. You know what I mean? When I was the first one, I had soldiers that had, DUIs. I had guys that were, drunk as hell. And I took time out of my, life to go make sure they were all right, to take them to AA, to do all this additional stuff. However, not all leaders are created equal. I've watched counterparts slam guys with UCMJ action instead of trying to help them. And I would tell these guys, like, hey, man, like, this dude didn't, like, his mom and dad didn't send him to you in the shape that he's in now. Like, we made this. It's our job to fix it and make sure that guy has a life once he gets out. And he doesn't become one of those 22 a days that we all know to be true, right? He doesn't go kill himself. It's our job as leaders to make sure that these guys transition out of the military correctly. And as sad as it is to say, like, leaders are just not doing that, right? And it's a sad thing to see develop. But if you guys don't have anything else on that topic, we'll transition to another one. Carlos will take a quick break and then we'll jump right into the next topic. All right, guys, we'll transition into the next topic. Before we do that, I had another curveball question. I just got all sorts of questions. This one's for you, Ben. Last war movie you watch, and what'd you think about it?
Oh no, I don't even know. Honestly, I'm going into pure compartmentalization right now. Like literally just drew a blank. That's that self-preservation we've all been trained into. Let me think. What was the last war movie? Honestly, I can't even think. One that pops into mind, I guess, is that dude from Finland, Sisu or something like that. Have you ever seen that one? He's this guy. I think he's in Finland. It's during World War II, and he's kind of a lone operator guy, fighting against the Germans. And the beginning of it was pretty cool. It was pretty good. Then it started just getting a little nuts, like, over the top. That one did not draw my crazy anger over some of the war movies where I can't watch them. One of the most difficult moments ever for me in the movie type environment was my son asking me to go see, was it Lone Sniper or something like that? That story,
American
Lone
Sniper,
Survivor.
yeah,
whatever it was. And I'm just like, I mixed all the movies together.
Yeah.
But I was like, at the time, operational still and everything. He's like, my son's 23 now out in California. And he's like, hey, Dad, will you see this with me? And I was just like, no, oh no. So there was a trauma fest, man, sitting in there. And then I was just like, honestly, just like the whole time I see him looking up at me, my reaction, and I'm just like breathing through every scene. But yeah, man, I think that was pretty cool. That Finland movie, wherever the heck it was, Sisu or something. I'm sorry, whoever, if any people associated with the movie are watching, I don't know.
But I'm sure they'll let us
that's
know.
the thing that's going to get you. Like, you need to apologize to that people, the Finnish people that you just possibly missed country. Like, just for the record, Ben, you didn't put that disclaimer out there for any of the other marginalized communities we've openly made fun of this podcast. But Finns is what Now I got to ask the question: Are you owned? Are you owned by people from Finland?
Was pretty cool, and he digs up all this gold and everything. It was pretty good. But the Germans were like over the top. It was like extra bad, like the worst version of the Germans you can imagine. It was like, Colonel Klink, but like evil, really, really bad. So anyway, that's it.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to add that to my list of movies to watch. See, that's how I build my book collection and my movie collection. I just ask other people because I'm like, right.
Smart. That was smart.
I don't know. But we'll jump right into the next story. Aaron, if you don't mind taking this one. Good old Dr. Fauci.
I got you. I got a lot of feelings on this one, but as the guy that's just going to facilitate the conversation, I'm going to try to be as objective as possible. So Dr. Anthony Fauci, he sat before Congress. Remember, he retired in 2022. Just a fun fact about Dr. Fauci. While he was working, he made about $417,000 a year. It made him the highest paid government official that we had, not including royalties and the kickbacks from Big Pharma that everybody else is getting. I'm not saying Dr. Fauci is getting that. We're going to talk about that later. It was a joke, everybody, not a dick. Don't take it so hard. So Dr. Anthony Fauci, they brought him up to talk about his testimony, to give testimony for his involvement in the COVID pandemic. Now, I don't know if you're tracking, but if you remember, there was this whole thing called COVID-19, and it shut everything down, and we had to wear masks and social distancing stuff. Well, the problem with today's environment is that all information is immediately available, and you can't hide it for very long. So we've had several subcommittees on this thing. A lot of it focused around a couple of different issues for Dr. Anthony Fauci. Now, what I'm going to tell you is this entire topic, the entire thing that we're talking about is massive. We could do, there's entire podcasts like Dr. Brett Weinstein's Dark Horse podcast has like 300 episodes. He was at the forefront, him and Dr. McCullough at the forefront of COVID. They have thousands of hours of content on it. There's no way that we're going to provide you a wrap up, right? So we're going to look at a couple of different aspects of his testimony, and we're going to kind of talk about how it is that it actually affects us when we're talking about it, right? So remember, DC is Hollywood for ugly people. So this is all theater. So the Republicans, of course, are going to ask very pointed questions to Dr. Fauci. And there's a lot of, and I am a conspiracy theorist, right? I like to think of myself as a habitual noticer. I notice a lot of things all the time. Like back in the day, I looked at the vaccine that they called the COVID vaccine, and I said, that's mRNA. That's really a treatment. That's not going to stop the transmission or the spread or from you getting it. And it's not really a vaccine. It's a treatment. Now, I said that in 2020, and I was laughed out of an office, and I was called a conspiracy theorist and, tinfoil hat wear. Now, that's all true. I tell you that story, number one, to make sure you know how cool I am and how right I was. But number two, because that's one of the underlying things here. We were told for a long time, specifically from Dr. Fauci and the NIH and the government and the talking heads and everybody online, we were given a narrative about a lot of different things. The first thing I want to talk about is the rise of misinformation and trying to counter that misinformation during this time, because it's something that we have to bake into every part of our life now. A couple of those things, for example, in the beginning, the initial zoonotic nature of COVID-19 was immediately in question. Because if you guys remember the initial narrative, there was a bat at a wet market that somebody ate somewhere in China. And then we figured out it was in Wuhan, China. And then we figured out that wet market was right next to the Wuhan Institute of Virology for coronavirus research. So the lab leak theory, which was initially debunked and poo-pooed, turned out to be correct. The gain of function issue with the NIH, so the National Institute of Health and the NAID, which Dr. Fauci presided over, has said unequivocally before Congress over the course of 4 years that they did not support, fund, or approve of gain of function. What gain of function is you're taking a virus and you're giving it different things genetically in its actual genetic sequence to make it more something, right? You're giving it a function. In this case, it was more transmissible to humans and the furon cleavage site issue, right? Those are the two issues that are in there. There's no need to go into the weeds of that. You don't need to know what the cleavage site is. You don't need to know all of this. The number one issue that they started talking to Dr. Anthony Fauci about, which caused all the hullabaloo, and remember, this is political theater. The Republicans were mad at his misinformation. He recommended the lockdowns of schools, to which Dr. Anthony Fauci said he did not do. However, videos are a real thing. You can see him saying, we should shut down schools. They should go out, faster, longer. Social distancing, when he was asked directly during this testimony, hey, where did this come from? Where's the science to back it up? He said, and I quote, it just sort of appeared. Now you can imagine with the feelings that we all have about COVID and, at this point, because I am who I am and I fall where I fall on the conservative spectrum, I'm supposed to start being very mad at you and saying very angry things that make you feel a way emotionally. I'm supposed to bring up the fact that it irreparably harmed the children of this nation, and educationally, they're 3 to 5 years behind where they should be. Wearing a mask over your face while you're talking to a child irreparably harms their ability to take social cues. It harms them in a way that we can't even look at, right? We had senior citizens that were dying alone in their homes during COVID because we weren't allowed to go over and see them, or they were put even worse back into assisted living facility like they did in New York and caused the deaths of tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of America. And we haven't even started talking about remdesivir, about some of these other treatment protocols like the ventilators that we think led to more deaths, right? So you wrap all of this up into one, and then you put the figurehead in front of the American public, and we start asking him questions. Now, you can probably guess how this whole thing goes. It's a bunch of he said, she said, you said this, no, I didn't, here's the video. The first thing I want to talk about is the misinformation aspect. I think that we all know exactly what misinformation is and disinformation is. Looking back on this scenario, and Ben, I'm going to start it off with you. I am of a mindset that at this point, I want a reckoning. I feel that there have been some things, if we look at the lab leak theory, if we look at the efficacy of paper masks, if we look at the efficacy of things like social distancing, we now know with hindsight that those are complete and total nonsense. The issue that most people have, and why the Republican side of the House got so mad at this, is because the answer to all these questions now seems to be, well, we did the best with what we know. As more information comes out, that's not the case. We knew all of those things back then. Dr. Fauci was on an email in 2020 saying masks don't work, you don't need to worry about it. And then later, came out and said, hey, you got to wear a mask, and we got to put masks on 2-year-olds on airplanes, was a thing for a while. So Ben, with all that being said, misinformation is a real problem. I probably don't have the best way forward where a reckoning or accountability is necessary. Why do you think people are so angry at what they view of the misinformation in Dr. Fauci statements?
Well, Aaron, that's a great question, but I'm going to answer the question I wish you asked.
Love it.
And what I want to say is that, first of all, we can't have it both ways. As I'm thinking about the fact that, we're saying all the hardship that befell this generation, this class, that people went through COVID and how behind they are. But, that's all bad. Wearing masks is bad. Young people talking to people with masks on is all bad and scary. But World War II was pretty bad, pretty scary. And yet we produced the greatest generation. So what I want to say is I think struggle produces strength. So what happens from all this yet, we don't know. We don't know what they're going to do. But I do think people rise to extraordinary circumstances and make great things happen. So I'm excited for the future to see what these young people who went through COVID at a very important time in their life, to see what they do. Okay, and then that's not excusing everything else that happened or dodging the question, but I think as far as like misinformation. I mean, as you said, people saying that we do the best we can with what we know until we know better, right? I mean, we've all been in the time competitive environment of combat and warfare where, you got to make a decision, you got to go. And so I think this is the thing, that you make decisions that when you are in charge and when you are the chief advisor to a president, and again, I don't claim to be a huge expert in all things Dr. Fauci. But having been on the spot, as we all have at some point, to make a decision, if you make it too early, you lose. If you make it too late, you lose. You got to make a decision, start doing something, and then interact with the threat, the enemy, the marketplace. That's why in business and entrepreneurship, we have a minimum viable product, an MVP. That minimum viable product is, this is good enough for now. Let's see how it does out there. And you go from there. So, I mean, if you knowingly misinform the American people or any people, well, you lose trust, and rightfully so. I think more and more will come out. Having looked at the testimony, there's a lot of bombastic behavior. There's a lot of denial, a lot of vanilla stuff. I think obviously constituents were very angry, and their representatives were, going after him in order to do so. And he was holding his ground and saying what he believed to be true, or sticking with what his story was in the past. But as you said, if there are videos in the past of saying, hey, this doesn't work and that doesn't work, but we did it anyway, then that's something else that, we're going to have to deal with. But I think obviously misinformation is something that it's just not good overall. Obviously it's it's an understatement, because when you're in a position of authority and people are relying on you, especially for their well-being, their health, and their safety, you have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that this is the absolute best decision you can make. Unless there's some really insidious, nefarious, every other is crazy thing going on, right? Conspiracy going on, where he was getting huge kickbacks and he's got the secret Swiss bank account or offshore bank account with billions to pump up big pharma that we don't know about. I gotta think that a guy in his position, under the president that he was under, is going to do his absolute best to make things the best he can, the right decision he can, and that's pretty much what I think on that.
I love it. I love your optimism. You're an idealist. You didn't answer the question, but I'll tell you what, it felt good. You know what I mean? So Jake, my question for you, Jake, like here's the issue, right? Unfortunately, call it one thing or you call it 10 things. We can definitely find some times where Dr. Fauci knowingly misled the American public on a couple of different topics, and that's objectively true. I don't care so much about the misleading. I don't care so much about the actual fact of the matter. How are we supposed to maintain trust in a health organization or in a government organization when we know these things to be true? How do they start to repair that trust?
So, Aaron, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna shit all over your trust, bro. Okay.
Listen, I'm just the facilitator. I'm not even giving my opinion. I'm just guiding. You know what I mean?
First thing I'm going to say, 1932, the National Health Organization, NIH, started a study in Tuskegee where they allowed 400 African-American males to live with syphilis that they could treat until 1972. That's 40 years that the United States decided to test. Let's see what syphilis does to the human body. During that time, they lost 100 people. So that's where my trust of NIH goes. Now, kind of at a dichotomy because my wife has a master's in public health. And we go round and around sometimes like the vaccination. Okay, we didn't get my kids vaccinated. Okay, we're going to go to vax. We're going to really fucking drop some nuclear fire on this motherfucker because vaccinations are fucking giving our kids autism right now. The fact that we're giving all these fucking shots at one time are fucking lighting our kids on fire. I have a middle kid that got hit with the MMR shot and it fucking changed it. Okay, so what do we do with the third kid? That motherfucker ain't get MMR until he was 4 years old, and then he ate it. No changes, no fever, nothing. Okay? So, this whole NIH and all that bullshit, I think, we go back to what we were just talking about, holistic healing. Why does China have 1.3 billion people? They don't use fucking big pharma, right? Like, they're just a healthier culture. We are capitalism, fucking drugs, vaccinations, okay? Was COVID fucking bad? Absolutely. We lost a couple people in our family. Actually, we lost more than a couple directly to COVID, okay? And it was what it was, but I'm going to say that I fucking murdered COVID. Fucking murdered it, man. Like, I fucking got after it every day. Got to run with we ran a mile every day with the kids. I built a master class. I fucking put a new rear end in my Galaxy. Like, I fucking murdered COVID. It was probably the most productive fucking 7 months I had, okay? But I didn't sit there and wallow in my own sorrow that, oh man, I'm locked in the house. I can't go nowhere. Fuck, I just got after it, bro. I got up at 4 o'clock in the morning and just fucking laid tracks, okay? But to your point, I don't fucking trust the motherfuckers ever, okay? Like, after what I saw with the vaccinations, okay? After I saw with the vaccinations for COVID, I'm always going to say this. We paying motherfuckers in Congress $200,000 a year, and they're making millions of dollars in the back end. Okay, don't be fucking fooled by what you just said. There's a bunch of fucking trash can actors in Hollywood. They're called DC politicians. And that goes back to why everybody fucking hates Trump, because that motherfucker don't give a shit, right? Like, he ain't in that game of fucking shenanigans. But, this whole fucking, how does NIH fix themselves? They're fucked. Like, I don't trust nothing they say. I didn't want to get the vaccination, man. I'm going to tell you the truth. Me and my wife, we were fucking have knockdown, drag out fights about it. And eventually I just had to say, fuck. And now I got it and you got fucking myocarditis. I don't have it. I might have it. My heart ain't fucking working great. And I'm going to tell you this. From our perspective, special operations, you want to know where it fucking punched us in the fucking face? When everybody had to get vaccinated in the fucking military, and all of a sudden the class went from having no myocarditis to having like fucking 30 people out of 200 kicked out for fucking myocarditis. Like, where the fuck did it come from? No shit, you know where it came from. NIH's fucking vaccination gave the motherfuckers myocarditis, and now they not in the fucking military, they not in the SEAL teams, like they fucking out. So fuck NIH, fuck your shit. Like, Aaron, I love you, but I don't know how they do their shit.
Thank God. Like, I'm literally just reading a news story. I'm going to provide three things of clarification. So, number one, vaccines cause autism was the claim. Here's what I'm going to say: correlation doesn't equal causation. The vaccine schedule changed to 72 vaccines, and when people say vaccines cause autism, what they say is the adjuncts. So, the aluminum, most likely, in those things.
Yes.
There are no longitudinal studies on how giving somebody 5 times the amount of aluminum with a developing brain, you're going to get 6 shots at once. We're going to give a kid 5 times the amount of aluminum with the developing brain they're supposed to have. And we have never explored that, right? But they will tell you in the same breath that the number one thing that affects Alzheimer's patients is the uptick of aluminum in the brain and the presence of aluminum in the brain. So we know it causes dementia later in life, but we refuse to even look at to see if it causes problems in children. The vaccine schedule went to 72 vaccines for children. 2002 is the surveillance year that they started. That's the birth year of 1992. The number was 1 in 150 children. In the surveillance year of 2020, that's the birth year of 2012, 27.6 on the same scale. That's 1 in 36 children. So the incidence of autism has went up 500%. And if you look at the other side of the coin, you know how much incidence of autism the Amish community has? For like zero. You know why? They don't vaccine their kids. They don't have a vax schedule. They don't do it. So that's point of clarification number one. Point of
Hang on, Aaron. Let me say one thing. I'm sorry, I'm jumping in because I'm on fucking fire about this shit because I got a middle kid in here, right? Okay. My college roommate's wife is from Germany. And she said, if it don't fucking kill you, we don't get vaccinated for it. Okay? They didn't have any vaccinations. I think polio. They got the polio vaccination. Okay? And their kids are fucking awesome. So, and the other thing I'm going to say, because I'm an African fucking American, whatever the fuck I am, black, whatever, fucking American, okay? It affects African American males, the MMR shot, 79 times greater than any other functional group across the board. I know that number, 79 times more than the rest of the groups, African American males on the MMR shot. Like, it's the most deadly shot to fucking African American males. But I really appreciate you bringing those fucking numbers because autism has went from fucking nothing to this massive catastrophic fucking problem, and it's all around the fucking vaccination. I rest my case.
I can jump in really fast too, Aaron. I just think about a couple of many years ago, standing in line and getting my anthrax vaccines. And you guys get the anthrax vaccine?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Went through the full panel of that. I remember getting this, and I've never had a shot, in the Marine Corps. I've never had a shot burn so much and hurt so much. It went in, burned all the way down my arm, all the way up. So when they were like, you got to get a vaccine for COVID, I was like, I don't care. Whatever. You guys already pumped me full of all this stuff. Who knows what's going on? One of my friends, their kid, came out with like extra fingers and toes and stuff after the anthrax. We blame the anthrax. Who really knows? But going to
you ain't gonna say it that way, Ben. Fuck that. Stand on the table. Anthrax vaccination gave his son extra fucking fingers and toes.
That's it. All I know is that I'm invincible now. I can go into chemical warfare and not be defeated. So I was all down with that. I'm like, that's okay. It gives me an extra, upgrade. Like my kids playing video games. But what I want to say is there's some other numbers though to talk about though, right? Other numbers to discuss. What about this? That it prevented 18.5 million hospitalizations, the COVID vaccination program. It prevented 3.2 million deaths.
I'd ask, how do you prove a counterfactual, Ben?
I don't know.
You don't. You can't.
Yeah, right.
Basically, that number is saying if I wasn't wearing a blue shirt yesterday, I wouldn't have gotten a car accident. Okay, so You're telling. Here's what you need to prove the number that prevented hospitalization and death. You would need a control group, and by a control group, you would need vaccinated people and unvaccinated people, and then compare when they went in there. But people are like, oh, we have vaccinated and unvaccinated. No, those are different people with different controls and different comorbidities. You would need two of the same humans in order to control the people that you gave the vaccine to, and then see if it actually prevented hospitalizations and death. To further go down and say, well, the infection wasn't that bad. That is completely and total nonsense. Complete and total nonsense, that number, in my opinion. So if it saved us $1.7 trillion in hospitalizations,
right.
Cool. I'd like to see how we get to that number because sometimes we accept squishy numbers like in this thing. But then when we talk about myocarditis being up 900% in the military per DMED data that they since suppressed and taken away, a Navy commander got fired for bringing up the fact that myocarditis is up 900% in the DMED data. Those numbers we're not allowed to actually use per capita comparisons like we did for the other number, but I'll let it go. I'm just saying I disagree.
Man, I think I was the problem during COVID because I was fucking full running and gunning mode and I didn't give a shit. My mindset was similar to Ben because it was like, dude, in 2003, I took Anthrax 1, 2, 3, 4, like whatever series that they had.
Oh,
and all I knew was like I wanted. So when COVID came around, I was like, dude, like, how much shit does the military pump me with throughout my 20 plus years that I don't know about?
Y'all are part of the problem. I'm saying it right now.
And I'm going to start giving a shit about that. I was like, hey, you want a butt cheek? Like, where you want to stick that needle? Dude, I got my, and I was the first one at the time, right? So I had a bunch of guys that didn't want to take the vaccine, and they were impacting readiness. So I was like, hey man, like how long have you been in? Like 18 years? Like, what's changed? Like, this is still the military, right? Now, granted, guys still stood their ground, but I didn't get it. I was like, hey man, like we're in the military. Like,
but that's
what's going on?
That's an important thing to explore, and I want to put you on pause there. What did change? What changed is your informed consent and your access to the information. That's what changed. I
didn't know shit about anthrax. I didn't know where that shit came from.
Did you read the insert? Did they tell you?
No.
Did they give
you? All I know was
I want to say
I was getting ready to deploy, and I had to get on ready. I had to become green. Like, that's all I knew.
Yep.
I want to say this, Jay. I'm gonna let y'all know how the SEALs do it. Okay. So we got a Marine, Army dude, and a fucking Air Force dude. So this is how we do it. Everybody line up in a line. Anthrax. What's this anthrax protect us from? One fucking strain out of like 120 strains of anthrax. Okay, great. You walk up to the doc. He got the needle. You either shake your head no, or you shake your head yes. If you shake your head yes, he shoots it in your ass. If you say no, he don't say shit. He shoot it right in the trash can, sign your ass off for anthrax, and keeps it moving. Okay.
This is why America needs a Marine Corps right here, baby.
Listen. I'm just telling you. I remember going up there and thinking to myself, fuck your anthrax vaccination. I watched them squirt it in the trash, and I skipped on about my day vaccinated from anthrax, okay? Fucking suck dicks. I ain't getting
this is Private Dolly is 2003, 19 years old going, I'm going to Iraq. I got other shit to think about. Like, yep, anthrax, no problem. There you go. You know what I mean?
Right. This guy's fresh off the boat, man.
That mindset all through COVID. You know what I mean? So, yeah. I was probably a problem.
In my beloved Marine Corps, it's you get in line and just Semper Fi, do or die. No questions asked. It's not even thought of at all. Just go.
Yeah. Well, and I think it also goes a long way that like we trust these appointed officials to do right by us, right? So when you find out like years later that it was all a shit show, then yes, I feel some type of way about it. But at that time, like I trusted the people that were in charge, right? Like, hey, I know they're doing what's best for the military, the country. Now, granted, we're having a different conversation now, but yeah, that's where I was at the point. I trust these motherfuckers because I'm busy doing my part in the military. I expect them to do their part and then give me the right answer and take care of me, right? I think a lot of us had that same mindset.
Hey, I'd like everybody to know that I just got served with an HR violation in my house. Not allowed to say flagrant things anymore. I'm under investigation. I just got put on the shot clock, so I'm gonna have to put my politically correct hat back on. And
the HR department does not appreciate your talk on the pandemic. Well, Ben, I'm going to turn it over to you because you have, a unique experience with this as being a commander and somebody that has to walk these lines, and I won't speak for how you felt about things, but this was housed as a readiness issue. The military is always downstream from the larger societal issue. And that's what we saw playing out with Dr. Fauci's testimony is that, our chain of command specifically took this on as a readiness issue. And they took these things to Jake's point, they took these things that they were saying as gospel. And then they did what the military did, which was like, okay, this is going to keep you out of the hospital. It's going to keep you ready, and it's going to loosen up these restrictions that we need to do tight. We're going to press for this mandate, and we're going to make sure that you guys understand that we are highly encouraging you before it became mandatory. We're highly encouraging you to get this vaccination and to avoid this problem. From a command point of view, how hard is it for you to walk that line, knowing that we could look back in 2 years and you could be completely wrong? It has to be something that weighs on your mind.
I mean, I could make a decision, say go, don't go, make entry, don't make entry, shoot, don't shoot. And 2 years later, I can regret everything. I can look at wives, mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters for a dead service member immediately now on decisions. So, not to trivialize it, but little shot, is it going to kill you? Is it lethal injection? No. Go fuck yourself. Take it. Get fucking ready to deploy. That's honestly. And so it would, I definitely, I was lucky. I did luxury. I didn't have to deal with that. But I'm saying, if it's combat readiness and they're saying that the powers that be, as Jay was saying, that we needed to deploy. And do you want your guys to get sick? Do I need snuffleupagus in the back? He's getting sick. So-and-so's sick. So-and-so's, I don't care if you get the flu. You're not operational. So we're doing a surreptitious entry and you're coughing, sick. You're staying home. You lose a couple guys in a 100-killer team, right? And all of a sudden we're down. We lose a couple guys and we're down. We're down in combat effectiveness. Yeah.
Well, so then what's your readiness look like when a fourth of your guys have myocarditis and idiopathic
I don't even know what that is. I don't even know what that is. That
doesn't inflammation of the heart.
I don't know what that is, so it doesn't matter.
You can't do your cardio with it. Yeah.
If that's in training, if they haven't even pinned on yet, what people say, right? Just maybe it's them. Maybe it's just like you said.
Maybe it's weak genetics. I've never been.
I didn't want to say. I knew someone would say it.
I've never been
in dive school. I remember being in dive school. This one guy couldn't do a tank tread. Another one like passed out, shallow water blackout. The instructor came up. He's like, weak genes. I was like, how is that weak genes? Like, you practically drowned the guy. He's like, you're spinning him around with all this crap off. He drowned. It's not weak genes.
Hey, Aaron, I got something to add a little bit. So one of the things that I learned, even in the surface Navy, but really in the SEAL teams, as a heavy decision maker, I tell everybody, man, the hardest decisions you have to make are the easiest ones, because you have to go with what you think, make the best decision you can, and then you're shooting 50-50 at it, right? It was the easy decisions that were hard sometimes because you're like, fuck, man, like, whatever it was, like give them an extra day off of liberty and you got 3 DUIs. But the hard decisions, in my opinion, like once you knew it was a really hard decision, you make the best decision you can and then you keep it moving. You try not to look backwards, right? And you allow that to influence how you make hard decisions in the future. But I always, like them hard decisions, once I knew it was a hard decision, I fucking just sat down and I made a decision and I kept it moving.
Yeah, I don't think there's any right or wrong to... Because again, while we were going through COVID, no one knew what the fuck was going on. Like mass hysteria is a tool that could easily be fucking.
No, there were a bunch of people that knew exactly what was going on. There were people that called that this was a lab leak from right away. There were people that called the death rate right away. There were people that called the bullshit on this mRNA right away. So to say that is a little bit of a misnomer, and I realize that I'm in the extreme minority here. No, that's the crux of this argument, and I think why people are so mad at Fauci. Because people did know what was going on. I walked into my flight doc's office. What's up, Doc G? Piece of shit. I walked into my flight doc's office and I looked at him and said, hey, why are we shutting the gym down? Shouldn't you be telling people to get outside? Vitamin D has a huge impact on how bad COVID is for people that get it. 4 times more likely for comorbidities, as a matter of fact. If you were like deficient in vitamin D, you were like 4 times more likely to have a really bad event. I was like, why aren't we talking about this? And oh, by the way, ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, those are available in our formulary right now. We can get guys on that prophylactically. They laughed us out of the office. I did that because I was reading things on the internet. Nobody wanted to look at this. So to say nobody knew these things, man, I disagree, I think, with everybody on here at this point, because I take a pretty hard line on this. But because, I like to, follow things like the Nuremberg Code for informed consent amongst an intelligent populace. But everybody did know these. That's the crux of this argument. It's like, we didn't know. And yeah, it's about readiness. We got to go. No, that's fucking bullshit. There were plenty of people like Dr. McCullough that were deplatformed for saying these things in 2020 and 2019. So I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to put it out there. No, there were tons of fucking people that knew, and there were people that knew better. But the narrative was that we had to do this thing, which is now, I think, where the animosity comes from.
Yeah. Well,
yeah. And I think real quick, I think like fear, we can never downplay the effect. Like, we talked about von Clausewitz, right, on war, that fear and fog and friction. And not just of war, but of anything that's life-threatening. Whenever you've been in a life-threatening situation, and it doesn't have to be combat, right? It can be other things too. Or you feel your life's in danger, your tunnel vision occurs down to here, and you can't maybe hear these voices of reason. Maybe there was this truth and facts, but it got drowned out by the fear that what if you're wrong? What if you're wrong? What if it doesn't work? We should, distance 6 arms or whatever, fucking not 6 arms, 6 feet or whatever it is, away from each other, and put the masks on and all this stuff. And take the shot, it's going to help. And so, like you said, I mean, that's why it's important to discuss these things though. Why, we're on here talking about it too, because we can all learn a lot, from what's occurred and learn to hear many voices and to try to weigh different narratives as they come in on the basis of the facts and not the basis of just the volume. Yeah. So that's important.
You're correct.
Hey, I want to add something. I just was sitting here thinking about what Ben was saying and Aaron, and so I'm going to tell you a little quick one, man. So my first kid comes out. We moved from Virginia. We got a country ass doctor. They good with the alternative shot schedule. We moved to Texas. We got this awesome lady. She's the pediatrician to 3 of my other friends in town. We go to her. I said, yeah, we want an alternative shot schedule. She said, no. I'm going to give him all 5 of these shots today. And I was like, what are you talking about? She was like, no. You either get the alternative shot schedule or you're out of my practice. And I looked her right in the face. I said, hey, we'll see you later. And my wife looked at me and I said, fuck that. We out of here, man. Deuces. We're gone. And so it's just, like we're saying the fortitude, right, Ben? And you're talking about just like, at sometimes like when it's up close and personal to you, you got to make a hard decision. What's best for you and your family? In this case, my son Zimbek. Like, look, bro, we out of here. He's 1 year old. We're not about to get all these shots. And so I just was thinking about like that fortitude it takes to walk out of a doctor's office, somebody that you're claiming is doing the best for you and your family and your kid. And you're just like, nah, I don't buy it.
And I think that's a good point that Jake brought up. Do what's best for you and your family. And in my case, I wasn't about to lose my pension. You know what I mean? Because I refused to take a shot and get kicked out at 19 years. And I wasn't going to, not get the shot and get my elderly people sick, right? But again, to each their own, right? Everybody makes the decision that's right for them, right? We can sit here and go back and forth all day, but COVID, hopefully it doesn't happen again. Hopefully these type of conversations get it to the point where history doesn't repeat itself, right? And when Aaron gets voted as the leader of the fucking NIH, we won't have to worry about that shit anymore. Right?
Hey, dog, I'm already on enough lists. You don't need to put me out there as the leader to any sort of movement for legal reasons.
Yeah, I'm running for president in 2028. So get ready.
Shit, I'd like to see that shit happen.
All right. So I want to end on a little bit of a lighter note. Like we could talk. Like again, the nuance here is so deep. We don't even agree amongst each other. We could talk about this for hours on end. But I want to end on a little bit of a lighter note. My favorite part of the entire time of Fauci's entire sort of his sit down with Congress is when he started crying, talking about death threats that he was getting. Now, I find this to be absolutely hilarious. As a guy that's received death threats that have been in life and death stuff, to watch an 85-year-old multimillionaire cry in front of the ugly actors in DC and pretend like I have any sort of empathy for him would be absolutely ridiculous. He is a straight up pussy. I don't know what to tell you. Like he got some mean words and he started crying. I'll ask in all seriousness, Ben, what would it take for you to cry in front of Congress?
Oh man, probably just having to be there. I really just let me go home. I don't want to be here. I don't want to talk to you. I just want to leave. I mean, I feel for the guy a bit because if they're threatening your family, nobody wants to have their life's work have brought ruin and fear and danger on their family. It's like he's not some mafia don. He's not a cartel leader. You know what I mean? Those are serious things where, going in. I mean, honestly, for all of us, I hate to say it, things we've done overseas, people we've been up against, you never know what the hell's going to happen. But thank God we're back here in the U.S. But I didn't see that part. I think after the 3.5 hours, I was like dying. I scrubbed through, read our notes, and tried to study up as much as I can. But I feel for him. I think that's, people giving death threats and all of that. That's it's just extra damage. He's putting himself in front of Congress. He's putting himself on the line. He's testifying. Again, I got to think that he did the best he could. If there were more to the story that they could uncover, it'll come to light because there are enough people who don't like him that they're digging deeply to try to find things that are factual and actual that could be prosecuted. And I never think that that's a good thing, being, and obviously if it's just someone messing around and saying something, you got to get over it and understand that public life, that's going to happen. I mean, God, can you imagine the life of some of the presidents, right? What they have to do. You don't even want
to see my DMs, dude. My DMs are a dumpster fire, let alone somebody that's actually famous.
Right.
What I'm saying?
Yeah, but anyway, that's just my 2 cents on it.
So Jake, during this time,
Fauci paid you $2 million to be his PSD, would you do it?
Which one?
Are you asking to be? Wait, hold on.
Aaron, if Fauci paid you $2 million to work as fucking PSD for him, would you do it?
No, absolutely not. That's funny, the question that you asked me. Yeah, and here's like, are you kidding? He's the biggest liar to the American public that we've seen in public.
40 million.
Oh, my 40. No, there's not. I mean, listen, everybody has a price, right? Like, that's the old question. Jake, I got a question for you, man. So Fauci's net worth with him and his wife went, and granted, he makes $400,000 a year. You know how much him and his wife increased their net worth during the pandemic? $11 million. How much would you need to be paid to lie to the American public during some of the most tumultuous times in American history?
See, I'm a little bit different. I tend to tell the truth
all the time. All the time.
So you may not like the truth, but it's coming out my mouth because I just don't lie. I don't lie a lot. I just ain't who I am, right? But I'm going to flip that around and say all them cats lie for a living. Okay? They take classes on lying and manipulation. And I mean, you know, like I tell everybody, you want to sell your soul for the American dollar? Go ahead. I'm not going to do it. I'm doing great. I'm over here killing it. And I ain't sold my soul one time for American dollar. Fuck them. You know, they want to get into politics and they want to sell their soul for money. You know, they got to live with themselves. Look at Nancy Pelosi, man. She got to live with herself, man. Like, just one of the nastiest people in the world. 80 years old, still in Congress because she's stealing money, or in the Senate. No one give, like, what are you? Just a bad person, bro. But, like, that's one of the things that, like, 2028, we putting term limits on everybody because we're not being run by the people no more. We're being run by snake-ass politicians that lie for a living.
That's when you're running, right, Jake? So, you're running 2028.
2028, boy.
I got to tell you, I will not be on your PSD just because I don't want to live that life. I want to get paid for being soft now that I've already got that 22 years behind me. But I did just come up with our campaign slogan, Fiat Justita Ruat Caelum, which I just mispronounced a lot. Let justice be done, though the heavens fall. Fantastic. Let's just speak that truth to power and let it all burn down, baby.
Sounds good. All right, you guys ready to wrap this up? I think we've been at this for about 2.5 hours now.
Yeah, we good.
Let's be specific though. What do we mean by let it all burn down? Because there's some establishments that don't want to burn down.
Oh no. So no, now you're in this with me. Like again, we're gonna get to know each other a little bit better, but I mean all of it. Literally every bit of it.
You mean like pizza joints and you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, real quick, I had a question or an idea.
Sure.
Hey, if we went out and like if we have questions in the comments, you know how at the end of some podcasts people be reading questions, but there's 4 of us. So like if someone just like parses up the comments, I've been looking at the comments, and just says, "Hey Ben, can you answer this comment?" Like I think it would be good if we had a couple comment answers,
sure,
like on the channel, like as the shorts or whatever. Right so we're not. No. I'm just talking about like in the future. Like if you see a comment, like for me, I just turn on my Zoom. I say, "Hey man, FM 45, you asked a comment. You know, here's what I think the answer is, whatever." Because I was just thinking about it. Like as I watched what Jay is putting out, we're really just repurposing this podcast. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of value if you're answering some questions from the comments.
Yeah, we can do that.
In short.
Yeah. Were there any comments any questions, anything like that, or no? That we saw.
So I've been jumping on and physically answering them, but you guys can, or we could come up with a template that makes sense because I've just been going through and just kind of answering them, and I know Aaron's done some.
You start a thread. Yeah, just start a thread in the Slack channel. Just interesting comment. And just put a bunch of screenshots of comments in there,
we'll
and we can do an FAQ, or we can
podcast.
Just do
like a Q&A. Yeah, that's too easy. Fellas, I appreciate you guys tuning in again. What do you guys have going on for the weekend? Aaron, you doing anything interesting?
Man, my son qualified for national weightlifting meets, so both Olympic weightlifting and then like weightlifting. So the Olympic weightlifts of the clean and jerk and the snatch. No deadlift. He's going to deadlift, bench, and squat in the other one. So going out to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, flying on Father's Day. I'll see all 3 of my children on Father's Day across 2 different parts of the country. So that's pretty cool. But looking forward to see that young lion freaking drop a win and hopefully win a national event. So pulling for him.
That's awesome, man. Ben, anything interesting?
Grinding, brother, as always. Grinding, building, winning.
That's awesome. Jake, swimming?
Taking kids swimming, brother. You know what it is. The backyard. And we got to go over to the new house and do a little bit of fence work. So they're going to be running drills and swinging hammers and complaining about how hot it is, and I'm going to be explaining to them we don't fucking complain.
Nice.
Jake, are you gonna let your kids join the military, or you're grooming them for something else?
So here's what I'm going to tell you. You say, where are you going to college? Okay, Harvard, Yale, Stanford, West Point. All right. I don't care what they do as long as they're the best. I'm living on my dad's motto. Don't care. I think the bottom two very well may go to West Point. It's just how they're tracking. Like, the middle one is war savage, and the youngest one is just a fucking savage. The oldest one, you know, I don't know. He may go to Stanford, whatever. He's into music. You know, he's going to go to music camp at fucking Penn State with my boys. So I'm not stopping them from doing anything as long as they're great.
That's awesome, man. I think this weekend we're going camping, so should be a good time. Should be a good time.
Ooh, I'm looking for boys.
Well, I appreciate you guys coming on again. Audience, let us know what you guys think. If you have any questions, put it in the comment section below. Like and subscribe. Until next time, folks, I appreciate you guys.